climbs wrong, red as a wound, and the forest forgets how to breathe. His fingers split to claws, his prayer splits to a growl. Then the pines light with ember eyes. The Hellhound has answered the howl. First transformation versus an infernal hunter. Only one survives the night. You're watching whispering narratives, cinematic horror crafted for headphones and dark rooms. New long-form episodes every day, doors honest, lights optional. Remember the name you were given before the bones change. You'll need it by dawn. The red moon rises, the bells do not, and the forest makes room for two kinds of fire. The moon climbs wrong tonight, not the patient coin that silver washes ponds and fence posts, but a wounded sun, haloed in rust, swollen like a hunting wound that's never healed. The forest pretends it doesn't notice. Pines hold their breath. The grass blades lie flat as if surrendering in advance. And in the clearing at the center of all this hush, a man kneels with his hands braced on the dead leaves and understands, finally, what the old stories were trying to warn him about. Some nights aren't meant for prayer. He had planned it. He'd measured distances, marked trees with chalk, rationed the pain pills, though he suspected they'd be useless. He'd hung tiny bells where the trail splits, little tongues of brass that would chatter if anything came from the south ridge. He sharpened a knife he would never use. He brought a bottle of water, a blanket he would shred, a name he would try to remember at the bottom of the change. Eli, Eli Hart. Say it until the bones come back home. Say it when you hear them leave. The first crack is small and treacherous, like a tooth of ice biting the inside of a glass. He swallows air. The second crack answers from the opposite hip, and the third is a braided chorus running up his spine. Heat moves through him like a poured alloy. His vision lurches, reds fatten, shadows go velveteen, and the edges of things acquire a depth that frightens him. Smells arrive like memories you didn't consent to share. Wet bark, a deer that passed here hours ago, the iron breath of his own blood just beneath skin. Far above, the moon lowers its face as if to inspect its work. He tries the mantra. Lie, he says, but the tongue is thick. It doesn't sound like a man invoking himself. It sounds like a stranger trying a foreign vowel. The forest heaves once and sound comes unstitched. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a cry tears itself into the night. Part whistle, part scream, and all wrong. The bells do not ring. The bells are listening. He strips off the jacket. It's neither decision nor reflex. It's a surrender to a fact that is bigger than him. The air licks his shoulders, sweat chills and then ignites. Fingers spasm as cartilage softens, then lengthens, then rehardens in an arrangement older than bone knows how to remember. Nails go black, teeth in his mouth tap like impatient drums, and then drag themselves into new positions with a hot ache that makes him laugh without humor. He wants to say a prayer for mercy, but the word sticks on the way out and splits into something shorter. A growl is a prayer with the grammar torn out. The night leans closer, a wind pushes through. The pines nod as if something is arriving. He catches it a heartbeat before his mind does. The sweetness of smoke, but not campfire smoke, not cedar or oak. This is meat smoke, fur singed in tiny mortal swaths, the perfume of a thing that cooks even as it runs. The moon seems to throb at this scent. The red in it thickens, a clot pulsing in a sky's vein. Eli feels the bones of his face set into a mask that is not human. He has the presence of mind to notice the sadness in that. There was a boy once who learned the constellations from a grandfather's knee who thought the moon watched because it was kind. That boy puts his hand on the shoulder of the creature now and says, softly, "Try not to make a monster of me." The creature considers, and then the creature howls. The sound is a hook thrown into the clouds, a spear flung through the heart of the clearing, a confession so loud the earth writes it down. It pulls an answer out of the dark, A reply that doesn't climb like a wolf's note but tunnels, low and thrumming, like a furnace exhaling in a cathedral basement. Bells would ring if bells dared. Nothing dares. The red moon looks down, newly interested, and the forest understands. A door has opened. What steps through will not be asked for a name. The clearing tightens. The night develops edges. Footprints begin to smoke where no feet have fallen yet. Eli, what is left of the word, turns toward the south ridge and bares his teeth, and the shadow at the tree line bears two suns in return. Eyes, coals, the glimmer of a jawline forged, not born. Something old has heard the invitation. It has traveled far in a single breath. The red moon watches its children meet. People misremember the order of the breaking. They say spine first, because the spine is the trunk and trunks go first. But the truth is stranger and much less kind. The change begins in the smallest, unimportant places, and that's the cruelty of it. Because you can forgive losing a limb, but it is unbearable to lose the exact geometry of your thumb, the familiar angle at which you once held a key. It starts there, the intimate treacheries. The rest follows like a ruined symphony. Knuckles unhouse their stones and reset them sideways. Tendons braid. Hair arrives in a tide that seems to grow from sound itself. Each breath lays a new pelt. Each heartbeat inks a new stripe. Ribs widen, one after another, like a fan forced open by a panicked hand. The sternum protests with a chirp and then becomes an anvil. The pelvis turns, a reluctant gait, and the legs vote themselves into a different parliament. There is a moment where head and heart do not agree on where front is. Panic threatens to unravel the whole design. Then the moon tightens the knot. Eli's mouth makes room for a future it didn't plan to host. Molars acquire the intentions of blades. The tongue learns to swim in a river with other currents. The nose blooms as a cathedral of scent. Every column a different hymn. The forest rises into him like an orchestra tuning to a kill. Beetles become thunder. A moth's powder is chalk on a blackboard at the back of his head. The deer that used to smell like possibility now smells like apology. The blood in his veins picks up its pace, thrilled by a drumbeat hammered out in the marrow of the world. Pain is not the enemy here. Pain is a scribe. Pain writes the new constitution of the body so that everything knows its duty when the vote is called. He does not scream. He cannot. The throat has specialized. What comes out is a compound noise. Sorrow strapped to fury, lacquered with hunger. It startles the owls into a silence that tingles. He could run forever now, across the black crust of the world. He could burn down the miles with this new stride. Muscles index themselves to angles he never earned. The ground is newly honest. No lies, no paved deceit, just dirt remembering everything that's ever bled on it. His heart loves the dirt. The dirt loves him back. But the smoke-sweet smell is here, threading through the cathedral of his nose. And the new brain that is also the old brain says this is enemy. This is opposite. The hair on his newly rolled shoulders stands. He lowers his head without being taught. The moon gives him his first lesson in hierarchy. Do not blink. Do not be the one who speaks second. He steps out of the remains of his blanket, a ridiculous concept that used to be warmth. The bells at the split trail do ring now, but not by wind. Something darker than shadows passes them, and the brass tongues fail their job. They clack once, and then corrode at the edges of light that isn't light, but an ember haze, a suggestion of heat so pure it is almost taste. The tree line fattens. It bulges with a silhouette like a dog's idea of God. Low, broad-chested, with joints that bend correctly until they choose not to. It is black in the way that black holes are invitations, not colors. When it inhales, Eli sees the leaves turn their dull faces. When it exhales smiles, he watches dew recoil. Where its paws step, the ground remembers a volcano it never met. Hellhound, not a rumor. Not a word grandfather shrugged with a cross under his breath. Not a caution for children. A truth that doesn't require belief. Its eyes are two coins minted in a mint beneath the world, one for passage, one for price. Its collar is not metal but promise. Soot flutters from its fur as if the evening were snowing ashes. Eli tests his new voice. He says nothing and says, everything, a throat full of law. The Hellhound's mouth opens in agreement or insult, hard to tell which. Between them, the red moon lowers, not enough to touch, enough to tell them both that the porch light is on and all neighborliness is now a lie. The first move belongs to whoever hates the mirror more. Eli lunges, the Hellhound does not flinch. It slides aside like a thought finishing itself faster than the mouth can finish the sentence. Teeth meet nothing but heated air. The return is a shoulder slam that would have shattered a human rib cage. These are no longer human ribs. They absorb and memorize. Eli answers with a rake that would eviscerate a buck. The Hellhound's hide pops with tiny blisters where the claw passes. They hiss, they heal, they smoke out a laughter Eli hates the taste of. He has never been this alive. He has never been this close to being ended. The bells fall silent again. The clearing makes room. Trees inch backward, leaf by leaf, so reluctant to admit their fear they pretend wind is walking them. The ground tilts, the angle that brings all grudges toward the center. The moon finds them both and paints them with the same brush. The red moon has chosen its sport. The second move will not wait. There are smells that define love. Bread in childhood kitchens, rain on a cousin's wedding tent, the neck of someone you were allowed to miss. There are smells that define war. Ash on fur is one. The taste arrives before the contact, a prophecy made in charcoal. Eli coughs out a hatred that he did not know was his to own. The Hellhound answers by standing very still and letting a breeze do the work of theater. Somewhere inside the stillness, iron warms. They circle because bodies know the geometry of violence better than minds do. The Hell thought watches with boredom and hunger braided. The Wolf thought watches with insult and memory braided. They complete a ring in the clearing that will blemish the ground for years. The pines strain to keep their cones from dropping like applause. The Hellhound moves first this time, a feint that is also an essay. Its paw skims the dirt to throw a sheet of sparks. A dozen fireflies born mean. They sting when they land on Eli's muzzle, so tiny and so humiliating that his rage cracks at the seam. He plunges through the spark screen and finds cheek, finds throat, finds the near mythic artery that all stories pretend is easy prey. His teeth close, his teeth slip. The hide tastes like iron baked under noon. He cannot get purchase. The Hellhound shoves him away with a convulsion of shoulders and laughs again. In that way the blisters laugh. He learns quickly. He is allowed one miracle. The mind that remains inside the wolf is nimble enough to pivot from insult to tactic. If the throat will not yield, then the joints must. He drops low. He slides under. He takes a wrist in his mouth and bites in the exact place where leverage begins. The Hellhound coughs a short, wordless curse. Its paw hits the ground at the wrong angle and skids, carving a glossy stripe in the dirt that reflects the moon like a bad mirror. Eli wrenches. There is a crack, not bone, something else. Infernal ligature straining. The Hellhound's breath stutters into a growl that registers on the belly more than the ear. They come apart and hit each other again. They are theater now. The clearing is stage. The moon is the lamp, and the audience is every night thing that can keep from screaming. Eli takes a rake on his flank that opens him like a door to heat. The Hellhound takes a shoulder bite that breaks the rhythm of its gait. Blood comes from both. On the Hellhound it smokes and smells a little like burned rosemary. On Eli it is copper and salt and defiance. When drops meet, they spit. A memory slams through him, treacherous and undesired. A kitchen table, 2 hands, a woman saying, "It runs in our blood, you know." Not unkindly, more like a weather report. She was right, but she did not mean this. Something older runs counter. Something from below the floorboards comes to collect. He wants to win because breathing is better than not. He wants to win because he does not want the red moon to go to waste. He wants to win because something inside him whispers that if the Hellhound leaves tonight with his scent in its lung, it will find every name he has ever loved. Hunger is reason, rage is logic. Suspense is the ocean they're both drowning each other in. The Hellhound alters. Not in shape, that stays terrible and true, but in temperature. It grows colder. Frost whispers along the clover. Eli's breath smokes a second time, not from heat this round, but from a chill like cellar stone. The Hellhound steps and leaves rhyme, little lacework footprints that glitter with disobedience. When it speaks, it does not use words, but Eli hears the gist. You can learn one chapter of this book. I was bound in it. He does not reply. He tears at the world instead. He rips earth and throws it. He leaps. He misses on purpose to bait the counter, then rides the counter into flesh. He has always learned fast. The Hellhound respects that by trying to kill him efficiently. A moment opens, one of those narrow doors only blood can see. The Hellhound's foreleg is planted too far. Eli surges on a diagonal that hurts to take, an angle that a human knee would weep at. He puts his whole head behind the bite and closes. The Hellhound goes to the ground with a surprised grunt. The world rights itself around their collision. The moon gasps like a queen at a duel. The ash taste thickens. Eli swallows it and keeps pressure until the Hellhound convulses. The influence of hell moves through its limbs like an argument no part of its body wants to lose. It bucks. Eli is thrown. He rolls, new spine singing in angry joy, and comes up low again. The Hellhound is upright already, jaws open, a cathedral of ember teeth. For an instant, a single shutter blink, their faces are close enough to reflect in each other's eyes. Eli sees himself, a creature he'd hunt if he were still a man. The Hellhound sees itself, a creature that has forgotten being a dog. The moon sees them both and grants a terrible mercy. The fight will be honest. No lightning strike will end it. No saint will step in. The night will spend them. The sun will decide the account. They go again. The forest tightens its grip on every root, expecting to be torn. They run because standing still would make cowards of them. The clearing explodes into movement, grass razored, bark flayed, a constellation of sap spattered on ferns that will glow sticky in mornings for weeks. They use trees the way boxers, use ropes, spring and return, absorb and punish. Eli learns the map of trunks at head height, memorizes the places where bark gives newer traction, the spots where moss is a step and not a slide. The Hellhound remaps the ground to suit itself, lines of frost and cinder marking trajectories the way chalk marks crime scenes. The bells at the split trail surrender their brass to heat. They slouch into puddles like gold giving up on itself. The sound they make dying is small and obscene. Above, the red moon drags a cloud behind it like a tattered cloak. Shadows shift from wolves to spears. They pass a creek. The water looks relieved to see them go by without entering. Eli will later understand why the Hellhound's presence curdles water in sickly little convulsions. What touches it forgets its name. But for now, there is only the calculus of fangs and leverage and how long sinew can sing before it snaps. Eli drives the Hellhound into a corridor of trees that tip toward each other in a windstorm 5 years. Back and never stood properly again. The space is narrow, the Hellhound's broad shoulders scald bark with every sidestep. Eli keeps pressure on the left, then abruptly vanishes to the right. He returns like a hook. The bite lands at the base of the neck, not deep, not decisive, but insulting. The Hellhound hates the insult more than the pain. It whips backward, catches Eli's thigh and closes half a history book around it. Blood leaps. A little scream almost escapes. He crushes it into a growl. The growl works better. Pain chooses a god and kneels. They discover something by accident. The Hellhound dims in full shadow. Where the moon strikes it outright, it burns bright as a story. But under heavy branches, its edges go foggier. Its temperature climbs oddly. Its footing loses a hair of certainty. Eli files it in the drawer labeled Unfair Advantage. He uses it. Into the hemlocks under their pig-iron boughs, the Hellhound's eyes dull half a shade. Eli feints left, sprints right, and body checks it into a trunk. The hemlock takes offense. A rain of needles comes down like knives, too polite to join the larger war. The Hellhound swallows them without concern, but the 2 heartbeats of inconvenience are enough. Eli's claws rake the soft place behind the right foreleg, that sweet spot evolution never quite armored. He feels purchased. He feels the give of something that matters. The Hellhound's breath hitches again. They part into light. The Hellhound punishes the attempt at cleverness with a flash of actual cleverness. It looks up, not ahead. Its gaze as roofline. It leaps into branches as if wood were made for it, not just ground. It runs the tree like a black river, skittering from trunk to trunk with a grace that humiliates gravity. It drops on Eli out of a darkness that sprouted from the bark itself. The hit is thunderclap close. Eli's teeth ring. The world pixelates for a blink. The Hellhound's weight is the weight of an argument backed by 1,000 signatures. They roll, they trade, they bleed. The forest delights in new myths. Somewhere a fox watches and decides it will never tell its grandchildren about this. Some stories are a tax you pay by never passing them on. Eli's thigh drips steady now. Warmth flees. The blood carves a map to nowhere on the leaves. His breath grows audible, a saw pulled by a dying carpenter. Inside the breath there is another thing, a rhythm older than lungs. It is the red moon's pulse answering back through ribs. The moon says, "Not yet, not ever, if you are worthy." The Hellhound hears its own drum, deeper, fewer beats per hour, each one signed by brimstone. It says you can end tenderness by practicing a more articulate cruelty. He lunges to end an argument. The Hellhound slides to begin 3 more. They become a blur that could be called grace if grace liked blood. Occasionally they land hits that change the next minute. Sometimes they land hits that change the next thought. Rarely they land hits that change the night. They are looking for one in that last category. The sun has begun to whisper about itself behind the ridge. Not light yet, just the idea of an idea. The forest takes sides without meaning to. A branch tilts when the Hellhound leaps, ruining its arc by a breath. A root humps up for Eli's back foot, lending him a height he didn't earn. If there is a deity in the soil, it is old enough to remember wolves that kept men honest and fires that kept wolves modest. It does not choose, it balances. It offers a blade to both and asks them to cut with care. They collide again in the center of the clearing where this all began. The ground there is naked, grass scraped off, dirt shining with moon sweat. They stand panting, both laughing in their species' way, both furious at how alive the other remains. The red moon swells another fraction and drips a thought into each skull. One of you leaves a mark that lasts longer than scars. Choose how. They answer by not answering. They sprint. Words become useless this deep into the night. Narration cheapens what is older than letters. Instinct is a blade that doesn't ask permission to be sharp. Eli's world simplifies into 4 vows: forward, tear, survive, sing. The Hellhound's vows are narrower and crueler: correct, punish, extinguish. In the overcranked motion of feral speed, they show each other family portraits carved into bone. Eli's were ancestor strides through his cells, proud and dirty and realer than the man who owned a wallet. The Hellhound's ancestor is a story that was told beside a pit and ended with somebody being thrown in. The red moon officiates the Marriage between these histories with a light that is more like a fever than a lamp. Eli finds rhythm. It costs him 2 bad moments to buy 1 good one, but the ledger begins to make sense. He eats pain with a craftsman's bitterness. This tooth for that tendon, this slice for that stumble. The Hellhound, for all its tyranny, has joints. Joints have opinions. Enough opinions, shouted correctly, can sway a nation. Eli becomes a parliament of wounds lobbying a single law. Yield. He takes an ear. The Hellhound pretends the ear never existed and leaves the pretense on the ground steaming. He takes a pocket of skin that holds heat the way the mind holds shame. The Hellhound sheds it like a coat too warm for dancing. In return, the Hellhound decorates Eli with a garland of cuts that will be stories if he lives. One of those cuts crosses the old human heart and makes a promise that isn't kind. I will beat for you until I decide to stop, and you will thank me when I do. How long can an animal be a god? How long can a god be an animal? The answer is exactly as long as the red moon permits. The night has a budget. They are spending it loudly. He makes a mistake. It is not moral. It is directional. He overcommits on a lunge that deserved half an ounce less passion. The Hellhound meets him with a mouth made of church bells. The bite doesn't close. It arrives. He feels not teeth, but a theology. It tries to write his end in a language he's never learned. He refuses by breaking grammar. He twists. Something in his shoulder shouts a vowel and then goes quiet. The pain that follows is elegant in its sincerity. He uses it as leverage the way a thief might use guilt to time a guard's rounds. He bites back. He does not feel noble about it. He bites low, where dogs, once upon a time, learned lessons about hierarchy. The Hellhound roars in a register the ground likes too much. A ring of dirt jumps, the air swallows itself, and then burps fire flecks. Instinct takes him into a place where planning can't follow. He stops trying to think his way to survival. He lets the new ghost inside him steer. The ghost carries maps from winters before roads. It knows where paw should land when ice lies. It knows when you must let your hind legs make decisions your front legs do not yet understand. It teaches balance by throwing him into imbalance. It teaches humility by letting him hurt, and then making him use the hurt as a friend that refuses to go home. He can taste dawn. He can taste it the way you can taste a library in an old page. It's coming, and both bodies know the math changes when the sky does. The Hellhound does not own daylight. It is strongest when the night is a locked room. Eli may not own day either, but he knows it better. He was born in it. He once pretended to be safe there. That pretend might be enough. The Hellhound realizes the same thing. It stops playing. It stops practicing cruelty and begins the recital. It straightens into a line that is murder's favorite geometry. Its eyes go coin bright again, even under the hemlocks. Its breath comes in puffs that smell like iron wet on hot anvils. It charges with no flourish. Flourish is for grief. This is for finishing. Eli meets it with a noise that embarrasses what little remains of his human shame. He is past words. He is past being anyone's son or friend or sinner. He is a mouth that owes a debt and a pair of legs petitioning the world to let them pay it. He does the one thing the Hellhound doesn't expect. He retreats 2 steps, then 3, baiting a speed that ruins control, then pivots around pain in the shoulder like it's a hinge made of stolen silver. They collide not center to center, but off book, where diagrams don't help. The Hellhound skids. The frost it carries betrays its own master, turns slick beneath its paws, makes a rink of the place rage needed traction. Eli rides that error like a man rides a horse he can't afford to lose, legs locked, jaws locked, bleeding into the fur he kills with. He does not know how long he holds. The moon ticks, the forest holds its urine. The world refuses to blink. The Hellhound's breath changes. It has less of it and says so. The blisters on its hide hiss in a new language. The earth, which knows many tongues, translates, "Enough of this. End it or be ended." Eli would agree. But his mouth is busy, so he uses his whole weight instead, a creed falling on a sinner. He drives the Hellhound into the ground, as if hell is the only place it can rest. The ground doesn't want it. The ground groans and gives a little, then hardens like the back of a stubborn father. Something in the Hellhound's shoulder, maybe a promise, maybe a tendon that pledged allegiance to wrong gods, gives up. They come apart, both hideous with damp, and both find the moon with rabid attention. It is lower, it is old meat, it is a judge who wants to go to bed. The next minute will choose one of their names and fold it into the dawn's pocket. Instinct sings its final verse. It ends with a note only bones can hold. They answer together. There is a special cruelty in victory when it arrives thin and late. You would prefer trumpets. You would like the sun to burst at your back and announce you to the field like a king returned from a war you no longer have to describe. But the truth is small. It limps. It stinks. It sounds like a wheeze through a throat that has forgotten vowels. It looks like two animals pretending to be statues because they have nothing left to spend. The Hellhound's right foreleg hangs. Wrong. It favors it without shame. Pride is a tool for future wars. This night is almost done. Its breath makes a sound like blacksmith bellows in a mine that collapsed on the crew. Ash falls out of it in little sighs. Its eyes are not coins now, but embers waiting for the last gust. It is still terrible. It will be terrible again if given an hour and 1 inch of mercy. Eli is a dictionary of hurts. Each cut now has an entry, and every entry reads like a poem, written by a knife who thinks highly of itself. The shoulder has become an argument he cannot win. The thigh croons of graveyards. His heart works like a dog under a cart, humble, fierce, half ignored by masters in a hurry. He would like to lie down for a year. He would like to find a stream and float face up and let the moon do what it wants with the rest of the night. But the Hellhound stands, and standing is a kind of speech. We aren't done. They walk into each other like old enemies, cashed out of rage, doing the arithmetic of finality with pennies. The moves now are simple because complexity has been spent. Bite, shove, trip, drown. Eli takes a mouthful of throat and gets a mouthful of heat that scalds the roof of his mouth and makes his eyes water in ways the fight never managed. He clamps anyway. The Hellhound's paw comes up slow, a hammer lifted by a man who no longer cares if the nail is perfect and only wants the wood to stop lying. It falls. It finds the bad shoulder. White blooms behind Eli's eyes. He releases. He bites lower and dirtier and is not judged by any god for it. The Hellhound tries to speak in that bottom language again. Eli interrupts by making the sentence shorter. Dawn peels a thin sliver off the ridge. It is not light, it is permission. The forest's color rises by 1 shade. Birds consider cowardice and accept it. The creek downstream decides it will gurgle again someday, just not today. The bells at the split trail remember a shape they once had and grieve it. The Hellhound steps, misplaces its weight by a whisper, and gives him the only gift the night owes him. He takes it without grace. He sweeps the forelegs with a shoulder. He hates and converts collapse into opportunity. They fall together and end up configured in a geometry that is almost a cradle and almost a trap. Eli is on top by inches and intention. The Hellhound's chest is a drum without timing. He closes. He uses everything that's still his. He uses the past and a promise he didn't know he ever made to a boy under a grandparent's moon. He closes until there is no argument left to have. The Hellhound does not die loud. It dies like a pledge being withdrawn from circulation. The ember eyes let go of their last orange. The ash on the tongue becomes a memory instead of a taste. The Frost melts from the ruts it carved. Somewhere a fox finally breathes. Eli tries to move. His body argues. The argument is reasonable. He negotiates and wins a compromise that looks like standing. The red moon is still up, a dirty coin on the world's counter. He howls, not for triumph. He howls for a ledger balanced, for a fear. Paid down, for the fine print that always arrives at the end of survival. You owe something for this. When the howl fades, another sound arrives from inside him. It is not a human sob and not an animal one. It is the body's gratitude to itself for refusing to drop the torch in the tunnel. It is obscene and holy. He finds himself back where it began without choosing to walk there. Clearing wears the fight like a fevered child wears fever, flushed, trembling, and secretly proud of having survived the night it thought would end it. The river of the sky lightens to a sick, pale wine. The red moon thins. The change reverses, not kindly, not completely, but enough. Knuckles that were countries become counties again. The muzzle remembers shame and tucks itself back into a mouth. Ribs settle like plates after an earthquake. Hair withers into nothing, each surrender a new draught of cold. He is himself, which hurts in fresh ways. The Hellhound is a dark pile that smokes less with each breath he takes. There is a temptation, almost a religion, to go and collect a trophy. A tooth would be a fine myth. A claw might keep nightmares obedient. He does not move toward it. Some victories want no harvest. Some things are supposed to rot into stories and fertilize nothing else. The first true thread of daylight pulls across the clearing like gauze pulled over a wound. He looks at his hands. They are maps of countries that do not appear on sane globes. He tries his name again. Eli, he says, and this time the syllables accept him. He hears steps behind him, soft, patient, human. He does not turn. If the forest wants to show him a witness, let the witness announce herself like a weather change. A woman he knows by the survival he feels in her voice says, "So, you remembered the bells." He laughs, which tears a scab inside, which proves he can still subtract. "I remembered," he says without looking. "They didn't." "They never do," she answers. "You lived. That's an old argument won." "Is it?" he asks. She doesn't reply. The creek, from far away, tries on its song, shy and thin. He turns then. No one is there. The voice was either in him or the forest has its own manners. He would like to lie down. He does. The ground catches him like an enemy who learned mercy. He sleeps with the kind of sleep that steals and pays both. Years do not erase nights like that. They varnish them. The gloss can confuse you into thinking you can see your face in the old terror. The forest knows better. The clearing grows back slow. Grass returns with a limp. Trees knit bark over old. Insults, but keep the rings as minutes. The creek laughs more now, grateful for the ordinary tragedy of droughts and fallen branches. Coyotes hold council there sometimes and agree on nothing, which means everything's working. Eli learns how to be something like a man again. Not the old man with the clean conscience and the patient wrists. A newer thing. A citizen of 2 parliaments. The body is never silent now. It has opinions about moonrise, about meats, about which shoulders should bear which burdens. The scars refuse to vote. They are permanent abstentions on the question of regret. The old woman at the edge of the village, who sells dried mushrooms and storms in jars, says, "You carry a mark that dogs will read like scripture. Be kind to the ones who bow." He tries, he fails. He tries again and does not hurt anyone who doesn't consent to be hurt. Nights with round moons turn thin and hot. He makes plans for those nights and keeps them away from porch lights. He does not drink, he does not preach. He walks with a limp when it's useful to be forgiven and runs when the trees ask him to. The Hellhound does not return, not that one. The earth took it with an eagerness that makes him wonder what debts it was collecting. But absence is not the end of a story like this. There are other doors. There are other nights with blood in the moon like rust in pipes. On a late summer when the river is low and full of secrets, the old woman sells him a jar with a storm that smells like juniper and says, "Wolves keep the doors honest. Hounds of elsewhere keep the debts tallied. Be ready when the clerk comes back." He does not ask what ready means. Words have earned their rest. He builds a place in the pines where the ground already remembers him. He hangs bells because bells are rituals that remind hands how to hope. He sharpens a knife because handwork believes in its own sacraments. He buys a blanket he will ruin but hopes he won't. He says his name when no one can accuse him of bragging. The red moon, when it finally climbs again, surprises him by arriving small at first, shy as a cut healing under a shirt. Then it swells, formal and festive, bringing with it a tide of iron sweetness that makes the hair on his arms consider other careers. He walks into the clearing with a faith that feels like betrayal. The faith that he can do this a second time, and that repetition will make it less criminal. The bells gossip in the wind. The creek pretends to be asleep and peaks. The change comes like an old friend with a new voice. He lets it. He breathes through it with the calm of someone who survived a question no one was supposed to answer. The world explodes into specifics again. Bark is a library. Water is an autobiography. Blood is a dictionary for the word now. He listens and waits for a smell that is ash on the tongue. It arrives very late. It is not the same. It is younger. It is cockier. It struts a little in the way scent can strut when it's certain it will be the last note anyone smells. He feels no clean hatred this time. He feels a complicated hospitality. He throws his head back and tells the red moon his intentions. The reply his throat finds is not an invitation. It is a boundary. From the south ridge, coals open like eyes again. Different coals, brighter, stupid with youth. The hellhound that arrives wears its collar like a joke it tells on the dead. Its hide is less blister and more mirror. The frost it carries is fancier. Tricks have been learned. They look at each other across the new grass that knows the old. Blood by rumor. He understands the ceremony. He understands the tax. He is not in love with either, but he is faithful to both. They step forward with the measured arrogance of those who know they will be written about, even if they don't survive. The bells ring once, just once. They are not malfunctioning. They are tolling for the part of the night that cannot be saved. He lowers his head. The hellhound smiles like a person. The red moon crouches like a judge who has cancelled their plans. The forest stands its tallest and refuses to blink. They go to work. And if there is a prayer in it, and there is, because even rage prays, it sounds like this, in the old grammar, the one written in ribs. Let the doors stay honest. Let the debts be counted true. Let the survivor carry the mark and never mistake it for a crown. The night accepts the terms. The story continues with teeth.